So who here has built an MCP other than the ones that we have seen on the screen? All right. Who here has used MCP inspector? All right, a couple of people. Well, so today we're going to talk about how I built an MCP inspector in Ruby and cleared the mental fog while doing that. So hello, my name is Enrique. I'm a software engineer at Handshake. Handshake is in the mission of democratize the job opportunities for people who are starting on their career or also want to accelerate their career. And Handshake is also right now working on trying to provide human knowledge to the foundational labs. So if you're interested about that, come talk to me later. And I've lived in San Francisco for around 10 years now. And one thing that has fascinated me is the fog. I'm originally from Mexico, so we don't have as much fog in the area where I used to live. But here is just amazing. This is one view from a park next to my house. And this is a view for my first summer in San Francisco. I was very surprised to experience that. And here's one of my favorite photos of the 4th of July. So, so it's not really fireworks season. But all right, let's look into the MCP fog. And I'm trying to say the MCP fog because earlier this year, Adrian from Ebro gave a presentation and he said, yeah, MCP, that weird San Francisco thing. But before that, I want to say thank you to Brandon and thank you to Pavel for already talking a little bit about MCP. I think Pavel is organizing an MCP meetup in Barcelona, a romantic MCP meetup in Barcelona, maybe. All right, so MCP, and now this is not the más cerveza, por favor. That is later, so we'll get to that point later. We're going to talk about model context protocol. And I know that you probably have seen the description and how it actually works before, but we still have to go through some of the definitions just to level up everyone who has not been in the other sessions. But before that, who here knows when was released? Like Pavel already said, November, but do you know which is the actual date? It's November 25th, so almost 1 year ago it was released, like almost 1 year ago. Time flies, and these things move really fast. So just the standard definition of what is model context protocol. It is a standard that allows foundational models to access external information. And that's it, very simple. And the way it works, it's in request-response mode. So the model asks a question, and the server responds with that. And it can ask another question, and the server come back with another response. And like Pavel and Brandon mentioned, the MCP server has tools, resources, and prompts. And then on the other side, there needs to be a software that connects to those servers. And in this case, there's an MCP client, and that can be either Cloud Desktop, Cloud Code, Cursor, Warp, or of course, the Ruby MCP client. So right now, we're going to just start and build an MCP server. And we're going to build an SF fog MCP server that basically checks the fog in San Francisco. And we're going to also learn fog facts about the weather, about the fog, sorry. And yeah, this is the first one. We're going to use the gem fast MCP. And I'm just passing as an argument the neighborhood in which you want to see whether there is fog or not. And I'm using the random function, which I guarantee is 80% accurate. And then the next tool that we're going to create is a wisdom tool. So basically, you can ask the MCP server to tell you a tip about the fog in San Francisco. And the next step is we have to register these tools in the MCP server, and we mounted the MCP server on a rack middleware so we are able to talk to it through the internet. And now I'm going to show you how the node inspector works. So this is the node inspector. This is not the one that I built, but I wanted to show you the difference. And this is something that Pavel already showed you. It's like you connect to the server, and you can list the tools, and then you just enter Fort Mason, for example, and you can see like the response. You get the response. And that's how basically the Node MCP inspector works. All right, and as you can see, it has 3 main parts. The first one is the configuration area. The second one is where you actually like interact, where you can request for resources, tool, or prompts. And the last one is where you actually get the feedback, where you see like the tool execution, or you can press or change the parameters. So if this already exists, so why build an MCP inspector in Ruby? And the main reason why I started building one is because I wanted to learn more about the MCP protocol. I was curious about like how it works. The second reason is because I wanted to explore other things, other gems in the Ruby ecosystem to see whether if there was a gap or something, some place where I could contribute. And also, the last part is like I wasn't sure how MCP would work, and I think that the confusion or some of the problems that I face, some are the same problems that we already saw in like the presentation today, but I'll get to that later. All right, so we're clearing the fog there. So how we build the inspector. And first, let me tell you that I'm using existing gems. I'm using the Ruby MCP client. I'm using the Model Context Protocol SDK, which is the default one, or the one that is supported by Anthropic and Shopify. And finally, like we already used the fast MCP gem to build our own server. Okay, so how I designed this, I basically said we're gonna have 3 layers, 3 areas of separations, the transport layer, the data layer, and the presentation. The MCP servers are gonna connect in the transport layer, and then we're gonna have like interface after the presentation. And let me tell you a little bit about the transport layer that we have. And the transport layer is what happens between the Ruby client and the Ruby server. And there are 3 types of transport. The first one is standard input, standard output. And here the MCP client uses Open3. Open3 is a Ruby library that is very popular now because it creates, it gives you back 3 separate streams that you can talk to, and these streams are in separate threads, so it doesn't block your request. So that basically means that it's the same as doing puts or like reading from the input, but without blocking your request. And this is a tool that is being used by other gems, so it's nothing new. The second transport mechanism is HTTP, and here Ruby MCP client uses Faraday. Faraday, I think, is one of the most popular Ruby gems to connect to or do HTTP connections. And finally, for streamable HTTP, it's just using streams, basic streams. And if you didn't know, you probably already use a gem that uses streams because Rack is the gem that uses a stream, very popular gem. So I want to say or highlight that these Ruby gems or these tools that we're building for the AI era are tools that we are also using constantly in other areas. So there's nothing that is magic. This is just like plain Ruby that we have used for a while. All right, so let's go to the next step. The next step is the data layer. And the data layer is what is being transported, is what is inside the road, okay? And in this case, is basic JSON. And for our JSON, the simple message that we can send is JSON RPC with the ID and the method that you're trying to call. So it's very simple. JSON is not complicated at all. Everyone can see and read, like even the machines can read this. All right, so the final one layer is the presentation layer. And I initially started like thinking about how I wanted to do this. And for the presentation layer, I wanted to to try and do like a CLI. And I wanted to do the CLI because I wanted to see if I could test this very easily. So I wrote this tool using Tor, and it's very simple case statement that you get a parameter. In this case, it's list, and I want to say, what do you want to list? Tools, resources, or prompts? That's like the main code for the CLI. And here's an example of how calling that would look like. You run bundle exec. There's an exec area in the gem, MCP inspector, list tools. And in this case, we're listing the tools that we have on the MCP server that we created, right? But of course, you didn't came here today because you want to see a CLI tool. You came here because you want to see the web interface, right? Like, that's why you're here. All right, so for the web interface, I decided to go with a Rails engine. So why a Rails engine? Because I think it would be the easiest way to mount or to share the MCP inspector. So basically, you just have to add the first one to your Rails application, and you will be able to talk to the inspector. And the inspector will give you the routes that are at the bottom, like get information, tools, prompts, and resources. Then the part that was like a little bit more interesting for me, that was a little bit trickier, was that once you have the web server running or the initial connection, I wanted to maintain the connection to the MCP server open. So I had to come up with a connection pool. So once you connect to the MCP server, you don't have to do another request to connect because it was going to be slower. So I created this connection pool that is basically just maintaining the connection once you already established it with the server. And finally, I have a controller that basically will say, give me the list of tools, and it's using the connect to server, which is like the connection pools that we talk about. And after that, I'm using Turbo and the HTML, which is what we all now is the common pattern for Ruby. All right, so this is the screenshot that I took, and let me show you how it looks now. So is it running? No, now it's running. Okay, so I'm gonna list the tool. Well, I'm gonna list the information, and now I'm listing the tools. I'm gonna click execute, and right now, this version, you have to type JSON. It's not like the Node MCP inspector where you just like type a number. You have here to type JSON. I know, but we'll see where it goes. So you type the JSON and you execute it, and it gives you back JSON again. So yes, it works. And now I'm gonna try the other tool, and that's it. Come on, let's go for the other tool. The other one doesn't require a parameter. All right, so like I said, this is the first version that I had, but I wanted to do a little bit more, so I started thinking about UIs with MCP. Actually, when I submitted my talk to speak at this conference, that was my main focus. Like, I wanted to see if I was gonna be able to build a UI using MCPs. And I mean, this is the main reason why I thought about that was because the node inspector builds dynamically the fields. So I was like thinking, maybe there's a way that I can do that. Maybe there's like enough data in the context that it's possible to do it. And of course, like 1 week later, after I submitted my proposal, someone already worked on this. Like, there's a team from Shopify and Monday.com that work on this. And this is how they call it, MCP UI. So this is basically, they're sending HTML data through the wire so you can represent it on see it in the client. Okay, so if they already do the work of like implementing that, I just need to implement it on my inspector, right? So let's see another example. We're gonna take a look at the MCP inspector for UI. And the first one that I'm gonna show is like load a link from external source. So here is loading the SF Ruby website. And now this one is gonna load HTML directly. So I can load a form and I can interact with the form Here is like the best coffee in San Francisco, and you can even like submit it. I haven't get to the point where the events are being transmitted back to the MCP server, but that's like in the roadmap. And the next scenario, this one that it says that is remote execution or DOM object. Like the difference with the HTML version is like this one you get basically a JavaScript object that you will execute on your sites, so it can build the HTML for you. And I think like there are scenarios where you want the HTML, scenarios where you would like to use the form itself. All right, so back in August, I said in a Ruby meetup that I was going to work on the web-based inspector, and then I was going to work on the UI integration, and that I was going to make it Rails compatible, because like Pavel said, every Rails application has the potential to be MCP server. And at the moment, or like last month, I was thinking, okay, so what is the roadmap for, or what is the things that I want to work on next? And I was thinking, yeah, I want to work on a demo that is online for this that people can use. I want to add error handling, authorization, better transport abstractions, and of course, like the UI versioning. That was one of the things that I wanted to do. Like, so you get an UI, the MCP server changes, and then you can get a different UI based on that. But this is San Francisco, like Brandon said, what if AI, right? And the truth is that AI agents have been more present than MCP, and this is because AI agents are taking advantage of a lot of resources or compute that is available. And it's not that it's separate from MCP, like I think you can use it in conjunction, but they're being most focused on using the compute for the agents. And recently, Anthropic released 2 blog posts that are related to this. One of them is about agents with skills, and the other one about code executions with MCPs. Agent skills is basically organized folders or instructions that allow the agent to discover tools and how to perform better at a specific task. And then for code execution with MCP, that's the part that I found more interesting, because this is basically they're taking MCP and running in the agent locally, or using an environment that is more combined. It's not like they're sending the agent into the wild. So in this way, they're saving tokens and then making it more performant. So in other words, MCP still will be like the connectivity layer on how models can access other data and tools. And skills will be how procedural knowledge, or how the models learn about using the tools effectively. And you're thinking, so what does this have to do with the MCP inspector? And well, we have seen that the MCP inspector has discover MCP capabilities. We can test execution. We can debug like the integration issues, or we can even document patterns here. And document patterns also means like generating skills for the models. So what if, for example, we could tell Cloud Code to use MCP inspector to generate skills for your MCP servers? All right, so this is the demo that might be a little bit harder to see, but let's see. So what I told here to Cloud Code is like, please generate a skills file based on the MCP server that we created, the MCP fog. And here what's happening is that it's first taking a look at how the MCP inspector CLI tool is being used. And then it's making a request to list the MCP tools. Then it's going to fail. It's going to make a mistake. And these are tokens that are being wasted like that because you didn't try it once. But this is something that with the skills, you will be learned for the model. It will be another learning experience. So the other advantage here is that this is running in an enclosed environment. I didn't have to connect from Cloud Code, the MCP server. The MCP server is connected to the inspector so that it can be run in a combined environment. And the other advantage is I don't have to ask permission every time that I don't have to give permission every time I want to execute the MCP server. Those are the advantages of that. And well, after it runs, it tells me, okay, here is the tool. Here is how would you use the SF Fog MCP server. All right, so what we saw today is we saw how to create that MCP server using fast MCP. We saw how to use the CLI inspector, kind of like a postman for MCP. We saw a version of the web inspector. We also saw an integration with the MCP UI. And finally, we saw skills generations using Cloud Code and Inspector. And there's a whole world of Ruby AI tooling, and this goes beyond MCPs. And so there are lots of opportunities to build something interesting. And I think like we have been talking about like what the future of programming would look like for a lot of developers. And we honestly are not sure where are things going, but we are getting more and more tools. Like for example, we have ActiveAgent now, we have LangChain RV, and we have Ruby LLM. And these are just parts of the same puzzle, parts of like the same steps that we're taking towards like discovering or clearing our Mendak fog. So we can say basically that the fog is lifting, that now we can see the path ahead of us. And this doesn't mean that everything is all clear, right? There are still things that we have to discover, things that we have to explore. But I think now we have the tools and resources to do it. So go ahead and build something cool.